Hello and welcome to KSQD Santa Cruz and KSQT Prunedale. This is Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, PK Hattis. Whoever said award shows are no place for politics? Former Santa Cruz County Supervisor John Leopold made local history this past weekend when he took home a Grammy for Best Regional Roots Music Album. The longtime local politician who served on the board for 12 years became the first Santa Cruz County Supervisor to take home one of the coveted National Music Awards. Leopold executive produced an album titled A Tribute to the King of Zydeco, which honored Louisiana musician Clifton Chenier on what would have been his 100th birthday last year. Chenier died in 1987 at age 62. Roughly 72 hours after his appearance on the national stage, Leopold is here in studio with us at KSQD in Santa Cruz to talk about his whirlwind of a weekend, his enduring fascination and passion for music, and of course, his striking sartorial choices. John, thanks so much for being on the show.
It's great to be here. Happy to support community radio.
We have so much to talk about. Luckily, we have the full hour here, but I do need to start with those sartorial choices. You had quite a suit that has been the talk of the town. Give us a little description of the suit, if you don't mind, and then tell us about that choice.
Well, the suit that I wore, first of all, you're going to the Grammys. It's a black tie affair. But you're going to go big because it's a big stage. You're going to be seen by millions of people.
Who knows when it's ever going to happen again?
It's the first time. I wanted it to be great for the first time. It's never going to be the first time again. So there's a great Santa Cruz designer, IB Bio. It's on the west side. He's a Nigerian textile artist, and I've gotten great clothes from him in the past. And so I went to he and his wife, and I said, I'm going to the Grammys. I need to be outfitted. I had actually bought this beautiful, it's like a red plush jacket with these black and white designs on it. And at the time that I bought it, there was a pair of pants. And I loved the jacket, but I couldn't imagine ever wearing the pants, the matching pants. And we were already started making this record, and I joked. I said, well, if this record ever came up for a Grammy, I'd buy the pants. And so in November, when we got nominated, I went back and I bought the pants. And they also outfitted me with the whole look that I had and the kind of boots that I needed to get and everything. And I love great clothes. And it was great to support a local designer. And wearing this outfit really set me apart from many people.
Which is hard to do at the Grammy Awards.
Yeah,
right?
it's hard to do. And when I was backstage after winning the award, I don't know whether I got more congratulations on the Grammy or the suit, because people loved the suit. And so I always have cards for Bio to make sure people know that they can get this great clothes. He does open studios every year, and I always try to be there the first day, the first hour, because I want to get the best stuff. All of his stuff is handmade. So I encourage people to go check him out. He's got a website, IB Bio. And if you ever want to look good and memorable, you can get something from him, because I can guarantee you that after I won the Grammy and I was walking to the Crypto.com arena, there were people who stopped me. They had no idea who I was, but they knew that suit had won a Grammy. So they wanted to take my picture. So I was a celebrity because of my clothes.
Right. And if that description isn't enough for you, I recommend to all our listeners to go ahead and Google John Leopold Grammys, and you'll see the suit. It's beyond description here. It just doesn't do it justice. Let's get into, what brought you to the Grammys and what won you and your colleagues a Grammy. Could you tell us about this man, Clifton Chenier? And I'd like to start as kind of launching into that, if you could tell us about the first time, if you can recall, the first time you heard Clifton's music.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact day that I heard him, but I moved out to California in 1985, in part because I'd come out here to see the Grateful Dead. And so music was part of that through line. And very soon after getting to California, I turned on the radio, because radio is a wonderful medium. And at the time I was living in the Bay Area, I was listening to KPFA. They used to play a lot more music than they do now. And there was a show on Sunday that was playing all this traditional roots music. And the DJ was a guy, Chris Strachowitz. And he was the founder of Our Hooli Records. And every other Sunday, he had this radio show. And I heard this music I never heard before. Cajun music, Zydeco music, this gospel music, this eerie, even Mexican-American music. And coming from central Pennsylvania, where I had grown up, where the most exotic thing was like bluegrass music, this was a real eye-opener to me when I came to California. And so his radio show became sort of appointment listening for me. And if you talk to my wife, we like planned our Sundays, every other Sunday, around the 2-hour slot that he was going to be on. He had a record store in El Cerrito, Down Home Music, which is an amazing record store that's still around, where you could find this, because at the time it was hard to find some of these eclectic roots music. And so I started picking up and this material. And in the 80s, there was a national moment where Cajun and Zydeco music was happening, and it was in the movies, and there were festivals. The old KUSP used to have a Cajun Chomp and Stomp festival, and so there was lots of Cajun and Zydeco music around. And in fact, it was after. By the time I got here, Clifton Chenier was no longer coming out to California, but he's played here, I think 20 times. Charlie Lang told me. About 20 times. He played at some great places. Anyway, so I just started listening to that music, and 20 years later, I end up working with Chris Strachowitz at the Our Hooli Foundation, and I helped launch that foundation, and I worked with him for 25 years. And when I left, I was a board member for 20 years. I was a volunteer for years before that, and when I left being a county supervisor, I took an interim position as the managing director of the foundation and worked there until Chris's passing in May of 2023. So I love that music, and I've listened to it for a long time. And Clifton Chenier is one of the great Our Hooli artists, and we know about him in part because of Chris's incredible recordings of him.
Could you tell us about Zydeco music? Like what are some of the characteristics of it that really jump out?
Yeah, well, it's an accordion-driven music that comes out of Southwest Louisiana that combines Creole, Cajun music, Creole and Cajun music with American rhythm and blues, and hardcore blues music. Clifton was into that. He was into rhythm and blues music. His idol was Ray Charles, and most of the Creole musicians at that time, played the same kind of accordions that the Cajuns play, which are 1, 2, or maybe 3-row accordions. They're much smaller accordions. But Clifton loved Ray, and so he got a piano accordion. That's the accordion we associate with like Lawrence Welk, and because he wanted the big sounds, and they're big, heavy instruments. But he would do Ray Charles, and his first singles were on Specialty and Chess and Elko, and he ended up on Rhythm and Blues Reviews with Etta James, Lowell Folsom, and others. And so during the 50s, so he combined this music together and sort of electrified it, and then started playing it. And he wouldn't just play; he would do 3-4 hour concerts with no break. He was famous for that. And he also, there was something about his music that was so infectious that he helped break down color lines that, white people started showing up for his show. And, the Cajun audience and the Zydeco, the Creole audience, and still in Louisiana, they're sort of two separate audiences. The race line is clear. There are mixing, especially in music, but famously Amadé Ardoin, who was one of the first Creoles to record, 1927. He recorded with Dennis McGee, a white fiddle player, but he was jumped after a performance that he played with Dennis because a white woman had given him a handkerchief to wipe his brow at the show. And on the way home, he was jumped and left for dead in a ditch and never played again. So that's the history. So Clifton playing this electrified music on this big accordion, he just drew in audiences, and all of a sudden you found white and black people together at a show, which was pretty unusual for the time. But the 50s were mainly singles. He didn't record albums. It was singles, and they were in jukeboxes and everything. And so by the time Chris Strachwitz met him, because Chris has loved Lightning Hopkins, that was his muse. That's what got him into the record business. Lightning Hopkins said to him one night when he was in Houston, "Hey, you want to go see my cousin?" And they went down to Frenchtown, and Chris tells a great story about ending up in this seedy bar where Clifton is playing these down-home blues on just an accordion with a rubboard player and a drummer. And Chris thought it was incredible, and that night they agreed to do a record, and he recorded his first record, and that was a big breakout for him. And he recorded, I think, 13 CDs for Our Hooli. Mm-hmm. They stand as the classic. In fact, one, Boogaloosa Boogie, is in the National Registry of Sound. And he went all over the country and all over the world playing this music. And he had a great path here in California because there were two large Creole communities in California by the docks in L.A. and by the docks up here in Richmond. And so he could play to local audiences, basically, in California. And, that's where Mick Jagger went to one of those dances and everything else. And he used to play up at St. Mark's Church in Richmond. And then along the way, he would play the Bay Area. He would play the off night here in Santa Cruz. That was his route, and he did that for 20 years. And so people got a chance to see him. He played Club Zianti, and he played the Chateau Liberté and other places. So there's a rich history of Clifton.
If you're just joining us, you are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz and KSQT Prunedale, 89.5, 89.7, 90.7 FM. This is Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, PK Hattis, and I'm joined today by John Leopold, who is fresh off a win this past weekend at the Grammys for the album he helped produce, a tribute to the King of Zydeco, which honored Louisiana musician Clifton Chenier.
The other thing I just want to add about Clifton, I realize, Clifton is one of the few Americans who actually invented an instrument in America. The guitar, the accordion, the piano, they all come from other countries. But when they were playing the French la-la music, which is the precursor to Zydeco music, they would play a washboard that was an actual washboard. And his brother, Cleveland, was his washboard player. And he realized it was to have this rope around his neck and everything, and just the intensity that they played, that he needed to do something else. And Clifton was down in Texas, and he went to a metal fabricator, and he drew in the sand a rubboard. What we see is the modern rubboard, which is one piece of metal. He drew that out, and that guy made it. And that's what Cleveland played. So he invented an instrument. There's very few Americans in our history that can say that they invented an instrument, but Clifton Chenier invented the rubboard.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to ask it. I mean, it sounds very much, it's just not what makes him such a legendary figure isn't just the quality of his music, but he was a pioneer, right? He kind of moved the form along, both popularizing this kind of music, but also sort of transforming it with inspiration from folks like Ray Charles and such, right?
Yeah, I mean, he took songs and he sang them in English and he sang them in French. I'm a hog for you, baby. Most people might recognize that song. He would sing a verse in English and a verse in French. Fats Domino's Grand Prix. He has a great version of that where he sings in English and French. And so he would play Cajun songs, and he played R&B songs. He'd play Lightning Hopkins songs. He'd play Louis Jordan songs. He'd play Dennis McGee songs or Can Ray Fondo. I mean, he would play these all a wide variety. He played a couple Ray Charles songs, And so who he was playing with is what he would be playing.
Mm-hmm.
So
man of eclectic taste.
well, but it all was, everybody was dancing.
Right.
Everybody was dancing.
Well, I was gonna wait to play songs actually by Cliff till we took a quick break, because I do want to talk about this tribute album. But feels like we've been talking so much about his music, we gotta actually hear the man play. So, Chris, if you don't mind, could you play that song for us? Would you mind introducing it for us?
So this song is called Hot Rod. It's an instrumental that was featured on his first record. When he came in for the recording session with Chris Strachowitz, Cliff wanted to record a rock and roll record. If anybody knows Chris Strachowitz, he is a traditionalist. It's his best and worst feature. And he wanted to hear the French tunes. And they almost got into blows over it. And they almost stopped. They almost didn't record a record. But then Chris said, we'll do one side, the traditional stuff, one side, the other. And I think this leads off side 2 of that record. And it's just a great tune. It's on our tribute. We have a great cover of it on our tribute, but it's a great song. And it just shows you the power of the accordion.
All right, this is Hot Rod by Clifton Chenier.
I mean, that's 1964. They're recording that song. That rocks harder than most things you would hear on the radio at that time. It's a fabulous number. On our record, we have David Hidalgo and Clifton's son C.J. Chenier do it. It's amazing.
It really does feel like it's just so many different varieties just smushed into one song, and it's just
well. And you have the rub board is the percussion. There's no drums, I think, in there. But it doesn't feel like you're missing anything. It rocks as hard as anything else. Mm-hmm. So it's such a powerful number, and that first record just knocks your socks off.
Well, we've talked so much about the past. It makes me wonder if there's any kind of direct influences that he sort of modern or recent artists who you especially think Cliff influenced his music.
Well, I mean, there's a number. I mean, all of them. If you talk to almost any Zydeco player, they'll cite Clifton Chenier as an influence. And Buckwheat Zydeco maybe is the biggest selling Zydeco player ever. He definitely was the Zydeco player who played before more people. He played at the opening of the 1995 or 6 Olympics. I mean, you can't get to a bigger stage. That's millions, maybe billions of people. And he started out, he got convinced to come down and play organ because he was an organ player. And he was in Clifton's band for a number of years before he struck it out on his own. And he was Stanley Doral, and then he became Buckwheat Zydeco, and hugely successful artist in and of himself. So that through line is there. And that was one of the things we wanted to do with our record. We wanted to celebrate Clifton on his 100th birthday, and we wanted to raise his profile. But we also wanted to show that this wasn't just a musical form that was encased in amber. Instead, it was a vibrant musical form. So we found nationally known artists to pair with some of the best accordion players in Southwest Louisiana, and we got many of them. But there are more than we could fit on this record. And so, we have Nathan Williams, we have C.J. Chenier, we have Curly Taylor, we have Anthony Dopsy, we have Gino Delafose. I mean, these guys are monsters as far as I'm concerned. Gino Delafose just played up in Berkeley 2 weekends ago. It was an amazing show. So yeah, we could have done 2, 3, 4 discs because there are great accordion players and there's so many people who are influenced, impacted, or has seen or played with Clifton.
Yeah, so let's. Sounds like it's a tribute album, right? You mentioned there's just a bunch of artists known, some very well known, some maybe not so well known, but they all shared this common cause of, paying tribute to this amazing musician. Tell us a bit about how this album came together and how it ended up with a Grammy.
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, when I left being a county supervisor, I went to work as the interim managing director of the Arhoolie Foundation. And Chris Trockwith not only had a 60-year history of recording amazing records, and he himself was awarded a lifetime Grammy trustee award from the Grammys before his passing in 2023. But he has an amazing collection of things. He took pictures when he went to go record artists. He recorded interviews with them because he needed liner notes. And he collected posters and other ephemera. So he has this amazing collection, most of which he gave to the Arhoolie Foundation. So as I was working on a variety of projects, I did a video with Charlie Musselwhite in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and a museum exhibition of the Sacred Steel Gospel tradition in Florida, and worked on a bilingual website about our Frontera collection, which is the largest Mexican-American folk music collection. In 2022, I realized, after talking with some people, that Clifton's 100th was coming up in 2025, and if you want to do something, you got to start early, because these projects take a little while. And so I reached out to Folkways. They had acquired the Arhoolie label back in 2016, and I said, Clifton's 100th is coming up. He deserves a boxed set. You have the recordings. We have unreleased material still here in our Arhoolie vaults. There's stuff out there. He should be on the same pantheon as Woody Guthrie, as Leadbelly, as Pete Seeger. He is that influential and so impactful. And to the credit of Folkways, they immediately got it, and they said, tell us what you got. And so I started working on this project. And then that New Year's, 22-23, as fate would have it, Los Lobos came to play here in Santa Cruz on New Year's Eve. And I have been fortunate to be friends with them for the past almost 30 years. And so them coming to Santa Cruz was a great benefit for me. I didn't have to go anywhere. And we also celebrated the beginning of their 50th anniversary year. And so after the show, I was hanging out backstage with Steve Berlin, their saxophone player, and David Hidalgo, their chief guitar player. And we were talking about what everybody was working on. And I said, we're going to do this Clifton Chenier. Well, they told me Clifton Chenier stories about the time seeing Clifton Chenier. And they said, hey, if you're doing a tribute record, we'd love to do a track. And I said, tribute record, that's a great idea. And, Steve Berlin is he's been a record producer for 40 years. He's a Grammy award-winning record producer. So I said, how do you do a tribute record? And he gave me sort of the recipe. And the first thing was you had to find a label. And so we talked about lots of other things that night. And then about 2 weeks later, he called me up and he goes, I've already started talking to people. They're interested. So I had to find a label. major labels were not interested in this because these projects cost money, and these days record sales don't. It's tough for them to do that. And then Joel Savoy and his brother were coming to Berkeley to play a gig, and I took Chris Strakowitz to what was his last time going out to see music, to see them because they were like sons or nephews to him. They called him Uncle Chris, and I wanted him to see him. You know, his health is failing, and so but I wanted him to see him. So it took a lot of work, but we got him there. And I knew that Joel had a record label. I'd known him for about 20 years, and he has a record label called Valcour Records, and they specialize in the music of the Acadiana region. And I knew that he had done tribute records, and I knew that his parents, Mark and Ann Savoy, were personal friends of Clifton Chenier. So I said to Joel, I said, hey, I'm talking to Steve Berlin from Los Lobos about doing a tribute record. Can we do it on Valcour? And he immediately said yes. And boom, we were ready to go. So it was a very special night for lots of reasons. For Chris, for Wilson and Joel, for me, for this record. It was birthed there.
Had you produced a record before? Or is this your first and only?
No, I'd never produced a record before.
Oh, wow.
I never
Good track record.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that spring I did a photo exhibition at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival of 60 years of our Hooli in Louisiana, and we did film screenings. And Joel's parents, Mark and Ann, do an annual crawfish boil on the days in between the weekends of Jazz Fest. And so they said, why don't you come to the crawfish boil? So I was really excited by that. And Steve, the Los Lobos was playing the first weekend of Jazz Fest, and he had time off, and he was with his family. So we said, come along. And Joel and Steve had never met. They didn't know each other. And so over, crawfish, we meet, everybody gets together. It's like a good Louisiana story. and we decide this is a good idea. So we have a couple other meetings, but by July of 23, we're like, let's go and do this. And now my job at that point, I brought the producers together, 2 Grammy Award-winning producers. And I knew the material better than both of them. And so we start picking out songs and talking about artists, and then I have to go out and raise money. And we decide that this record is going to be a benefit record. It's going to create the Clifton Chenier Scholarship at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. They have maybe the best traditional music program in the country, and that it would go to training future Zydeco players. And so we had a cause, we had a mission in raising the profile of Clifton Chenier, and we found a nonprofit sponsor in a group called Love of People, which supports service workers in the entertainment industry. They agreed to be our fiscal sponsor. Then we went out and raised money through grants, tax incentive money, tourism dollars, and private donations to raise, I think we raised over $100,000 for this project. And then we did 6 days of recording at Dockside Studio in right outside Lafayette, and it was a dream come true for a guy like me who loves this music. We had an amazing house band that this music was part of their DNA. Roddy Romero, Eric Adcock, Lee Alanzino, who had been Buckwheat Zydeco's bass player, Jermaine Perjean, Derek Houston. These songs, you didn't have to teach them these songs. And then we brought in amazing artists and amazing accordion players. And we had so many. I could write a book just about the sessions because they were so special.
You have a picture book, right?
Yeah, I have a picture book of many of the sessions, and then we went to work. And along the way, we had more songs than we could fit on an LP, which is a mixed blessing. If you get the CD or the digital download, you get all of them. Even if you buy the LP, you can download the other 2. But we have such a great cast. We have Taj Mahal, Steve Earle, Lucinda Williams, John Cleary, Charlie Crockett, Shannon McNally, David Hidalgo from Los Lobos. We have Los Tex Maniacs with Ruben Ramos and Augie Myers. Of course, we have C.J. Chenier. And then we have these great accordion players. and we had a great record. We had 13 tracks.
Well,
And-
let's have a listen to After Much Ado, to one of those tracks. We'll go with let's start actually at the very end. I'm Coming Home. This is by CJ Chenier and Sonny Landreth, and CJ Chenier, of course, is Clifford's
is the son of Clifton Chenier,
or Clifton, excuse me.
and he was in the Red Hot Louisiana band. His father asked him to join, and he was a saxophone player for the final 5 or 6 years of the band. And his father taught him accordion, gave him his accordion, and he continued the Red Hot Louisiana band after Clifton died, and he's still a powerful performer today.
All right, so this is I'm Coming Home.
There you go. You ready? 2, 3.
That was I'm Coming Home, performed by CJ Chenier and Sonny Landreth from A Tribute to the King of Zydeco. If you're just joining us, my name is PK Hattis. This is KSQD's Talk of the Bay and KSQT Prunedale. I'm joined today by John Leopold, who executive produced that album. Once again, A Tribute to the King of Zydeco, honoring Louisiana musician Clifton Chenier. John, tell us a bit more about that song. I know each one has quite a bit of history and background, but
yeah, well, that song is a song that Clifton Chenier wrote for his mother as he was trying to get home as she was dying. So it was an incredibly powerful song in his repertoire to begin with. C.J. Chenier asked to do that song, and this was I consider this the family and friends song. We did cut this on a Saturday. CJ came with his kids and grandkids to the session. His cousin, Cleveland Chenier's granddaughter, was playing Cleveland's rubboard on the track. And then on guitar is Sonny Landreth, who was in the Red Hot Louisiana band with CJ. And so you have these people who are intimately connected to Clifton playing this song about trying to reach a dying parent in tribute to the long lost patriarch, and so it was a really moving session for all of us involved, and then we sat down and had this amazing meal after it was over, and CJ gave his blessing to the record by just being on it. But he really felt like we had captured it when he heard the track. So it was a great day. It was a great day in the studio.
Like I said, there's so much to say about each one of these tracks, and there's plenty more tracks to listen to, and we will listen to hopefully at least a couple more. But I'd be remiss if I didn't actually ask you about going to the Grammys.
Yeah, sure.
Because that is the news that drove the day here in Santa Cruz, at least. And like I said, first Santa Cruz County supervisor to win a Grammy. I'd wager the first to go to the Grammys. I don't know about that.
I don't think there's anyone who's even been nominated.
Probably not. But just tell us about that experience, right? It's not something that many people have gone through. So just, if you don't mind, just kind of walking us through almost kind of like...
Well, it was an incredible weekend. I mean, it started on Saturday because there was a luncheon for all the Louisiana and Mississippi nominees on the outdoor patio at the Grammy Museum, and there trombone shorty Kyle Rouse, the head of the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, Ben Jaffe, Samantha Fish, Jimmy Vaughn. All these great artists are there. We got food by Wolfgang Puck. It was all New Orleans food. And we had performances from a number of those artists, as well as a New Breed brass band and another Texas artist whose name I'm forgetting right at the moment. But it was all people from the music industry, from Mississippi and Louisiana. So for a fan like me, I'm in my little slice of heaven, and being able to sit and talk to some of these artists and think about work that we could do together was super exciting. And I was handing out some Clifton pins. Everybody was wearing their Clifton pins with his crown, and we got our picture taken with a lot of great artists. And if that is what we had gone down to Los Angeles to do, that would have been a great weekend. But the next day was the actual awards ceremony. There are about 95 Grammy Awards. Only 10 of them you see on TV. So there's a event that happens that starts 4 hours before the telecast in the theater next door, the Peacock Theater, and that's where they give out the classical ones and the jazz and the gospel and the Americana and the blues and the children's music. All those. And it's general admission, so you can sit with anybody. And it's so we were sitting in a row, which in the end had 4 different Grammy winners.
Wow. And
that's not even counting, I'm going to say Washington, is sitting at the end of the row. And, we're seeing all sorts of Americana artists. And so we're sitting there in taking it all in. And Joel had won a Grammy before, but this is the first time he was up. He was the one that was up instead of a group that he had produced. And so it came to our category. They announced we have it's a tough category. Trombone Shorty opened the show. He played in the first number. He played at that Louisiana luncheon. He's our competition, and that's pretty intense. Preservation Hall has been around for 65 years, so that's a big deal. Corey Henry is amazing. Kyle Rouse is amazing. So we didn't dare think that we could actually win. And when they called our name, the name of our record, this wave hit you that's pretty strong. And we went down, and Joel had told me beforehand that he was emotional when he spoke in front of crowds, and that he may not be able to make it through, that I might have to give the whole speech. And so we did work out what we wanted to say, because there's so many people that you could thank that, once you start giving a long list, it's easy to leave somebody off. And so we get down there, and then we're kind of surprised, in a good way, by Cam Franklin and A.J. Hansey, who were there. They are on the record. They sang this great song, Why Did You Go Last Night? And they were at the Grammys, and so they came up because it's their Grammy too, yeah. Right? They're not getting a statue, but it's mm-hmm. their recording as well. So they came up on stage with us. Joel started, and he was pretty emotional, and it looked like he wasn't going to make it. And then one of our friends who was there yelled out his name, and it sort of kicked him into gear. And he spoke, and then I spoke. and I was holding the Grammy, and at the end I said, listen, you can stream this record on all the services, but if you buy the record, every single cent goes to a scholarship in Clifton's name at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Got a great applause, and then you're whisked backstage where they take your Grammy because it's not inscribed yet. And then there's a number of stations. You go downstairs into the bowels of the Crypto Arena, and the Peacock Theater and Crypto Arena are right next to each other. They're connected underground. They have this whole Grammy area where you have to go to different stations, and they have an open bar, and all the winners are down there. And so it's a great milieu to be hanging out with. We were hanging with the women who were with her, Sarah Jarosz and Aubrey O'Donovan and Christian McBride, the great jazz bass player, and a 7-year-old gospel star, and these other jazz heavyweights, and we're drinking, having a good time, waiting for our turn to go in front of the photographer. There's like 20 photographers, and they hand you a Grammy, you stand in front of it, and then they say, look left, look right, look forward, and they take your picture.
Any red carpet training in board chain, going through the board of supervisor stuff? I'm guessing that wasn't part of the onboarding process.
Smile. Yeah, just smile. And then there's a press conference you go to, and again, you can't see any of the people, but they say there'll be a question from the left, and someone asked you a question, and we both got to answer it, and they go, and there's a question from the right, and you do it that way. And then it's on Grammy TV. They interview you. Then you get interviewed by someone from the Recording Academy for like some internal Grammy thing. And this all took like an hour and a half. So we had been drinking the entire time. And then it comes to our official portrait. Now, at this time, we're sort of worried because our wives are upstairs and we have the tickets for the Crypto.com portion, the telecast. And we can't transfer the tickets to them. So we're kind of worried. And Joelle says, well, maybe we should just skip this official portrait. And our minder from the Grammys like, you can't skip it. This is a requirement. And someone comes over and then says, your wives don't need the ticket. Once you're inside the Peacock Theater, you get into the Crypto Theater. So we waited and saw some more people, and we got an official Grammy portrait, which I got mine in the email today. It's a great picture. Showcases my suit, my statue, and my friend, and me. So, and then you go to the telecast, and the telecast is like a whole other world, because it's like, just think of the biggest production rock and roll shows that go on, and think of that times 10. Right. And so it's amazing to watch it all go on. It's not really geared, I don't think, to the people who are sitting in the room. Maybe if you're in the first, the ones you see on TV. Mm-hmm. But if you're in the back, you get to watch this all goes on, but you're not close to it.
It's a made-for-TV experience.
It is. It's a TV production that there are people at. And so, but, there were great performances, and they did this beautiful memoriam section and started it with a memoriam to Bob Weir, which is, was a friend of mine. I served on the Rex Foundation board with him for 10 years. And then they did this Ozzy Osbourne tribute, and then this, Roberta Flack and D'Angelo. And so there was a lot going on. And, Lady Gaga performed, Justin Bieber performed. So these are the top names in pop music. And so I'm probably not going to go to any of their concerts. So this is my chance to see all these artists. And there were a couple people from Santa Cruz that were there for various reasons. So I got to see them. And then it was over. And we didn't go to the after party at the Grammy Museum because we heard that's kind of, sort of a not happening party. So we had a couple of our donors who were there, and we went out to a restaurant close by, and we drank, and there were other Grammy winners there, and we shut down the place. It was a great night of celebration, and my phone was blowing up the entire time. I heard from everybody I know, and some people I haven't heard from in a long time. I'm sure
that trend has continued as the media firestorm, at least here in Santa Cruz County.
Well, it started dying down, and then the Sentinel and Lookout and KSBW did something on Tuesday morning, and then it started all over again. And
Did you aspire, as I mentioned in the intro, you served 3 terms on the Board of Supervisors, 12 years total. You're a well-known political presence in Santa Cruz County. When you were transitioning off the board, was your focus music? Is this something you envisioned for yourself?
Well, I mean, I'd always been involved with music. I'd started working with Chris in the late 90s. Around the same time, I got appointed to the Rex Foundation board. So that put me close to music. I don't play an instrument. So I have to figure out other ways that I can contribute to be part of music. And writing grants for Chris and helping out, figuring out where to give money for the Rex. Those were a good way, those were good. I had good skills to help manage those processes and help these creative folks accomplish what they want to do. So when I was talking with the executive director of the Arhoolie Foundation, who I had known for 15, 16 years, and I helped him become the executive director, he was looking to go to Spain with his family for a year. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything after January 2021. I have bandwidth, and that would be a good thing to cleanse the palate after 12 years, 20 years as an elected official. I was on the Cabrillo board for 8 years before that. So I started doing that, and I found that to be pretty rich vein. The only thing I missed was helping out a lot of people. And so, I do have a day job here in Santa Cruz where I'm the director of the Central Coast K-16 Regional Collaborative, which is a 6-county educational partnership effort to build career pathways for underrepresented students from Santa Cruz down to Ventura. And that's pretty rich, and that helps feed my sort of social justice part of my life. But I like this record part. You can't really make a lot of money in records these days, but you can have a lot of fun. And so it's a good match. And Joel's was a great partner to work with. Steve Berlin is an extraordinary partner to work with. The musicians were all great, and everybody's there for the right love. So and these are professionals. So we were very fortunate not to have people with addiction problems or people not able to perform at their moment. Everybody was kind of doing one song. So you got them at their best, and we had a crew there videotaping sessions and doing interviews with everybody, and so it was wonderful, and it's allowed me to do it. This past year, I went to Louisiana 4 times, once for Mardi Gras because I had to close. We didn't talk about this, but we had this record done. We had 13 tracks. And one of a producer that was helping us out, a guy named C.C. Adcock, which is this amazing guitarist, slightly crazy guy, and he wanted to get the Rolling Stones on it, and we knew that they loved the Clifton Chenier, so we said great, but he missed like 6 deadlines, so we sequenced the record and sent it to the press and got back our first test pressing, and he calls us in December 24 and says, I got the Stones. And he sends us the vocal track of Mick Jagger with his harmonica singing in French. And we're like, okay, but you got to get this song done, mixed and mastered by the end of December, or else we won't make it in time for Clifton's birthday in June. And, he goes to New York for a session with Ron Wood and Keith Richards. And they do an amazing version of Zydeco Sans Pas Soleil, which is a defining track of the genre. And then we have too many songs. We have 2 songs too many, but we have the Rolling Stones on our record. And they've never contributed a song to someone else's record. They've never recorded a song with an accordion before. And Mick Jagger has never sung in French on any record before. And we got all 3. So that's quite a trifecta. And so we had this amazing record that received great reviews. We did a concert at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival with a number of the performers in May during a day that they were honoring Clifton Chenier. We had a record release party at the New Orleans Jazz Museum in June on Clifton's birthday with 250 people and scores of musicians that went until 4 in the morning. everything you would expect from a New Orleans party happened at that party, and then to get the Grammy nomination, you know,
cherry on top.
It's just, it's hard to put in words what's that like. We didn't do this to get a Grammy. Our goal was to promote Clifton and his music and show that it wasn't that it was a vibrant form of music, and that there were lots of people who loved this music. And we get, you know, maybe people in this room, maybe they knew about Clifton Chenier, maybe they didn't, but now they're going to start thinking about Clifton Chenier and they're going to go check him out. And that was our goal.
Well, I know I'll be thinking about this album for some time, and look forward to listening to more of it. I think you queued up well that first track, Zydeco Son Pas Salé. I hope I got that right. The Rolling Stones were the big headliner on this one. So let's have a listen to it. That's the first track on A Tribute to the King of Zydeco. Once again, that was the Rolling Stones performing Zydeco Son Pas Salé on the album A Tribute to the King of Zydeco, about the Louisiana musician Clifton Chenier. John Leopold, former Santa Cruz County Supervisor, joining me today, served as a producer on that album. John, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show, and kind of want to, in our last few minutes here, want to kind of open the floor actually to see where you'd like to close this. I mean, this album, so much went into it. It was years in the making. Obviously, this is a beloved figure in music, an important place in the musical canon here. Where would you like to kind of close this? Are there more stories to come related to this album, or certain reflections that stuck with you as you kind of reach this pinnacle point?
There's a ton more stories, because every song on this one has a story, and the players on it, and just that whole musical community is incredibly fantastic. And if people don't know Cajun and Zydeco music, seek it out, find it, support it. And you know, the most important thing, and I think it made sense. They said, one of the interviews we had after the Grammy said, "What are you going to tell those 15,000 Grammy voters who voted for you?" We said, "Thanks for voting for real music. You know, these are real musicians playing real instruments, and we should need to do more of that. So go down to the Catalyst or the Moe's, go to the Crate Place, go to Felton Music Hall, support live music, because that's the way in which we keep a rich cultural tradition, and lots of different traditions. I love this one, these traditional ones, but there are others. And if people are playing the actual instruments and they're not auto-tuning their voice, those, we should support them. We may not like all the music, but those are real musicians and they deserve support."
All right. Well, I guess I'll end on this. I got to ask you where the Grammy is. Did everybody get their own Grammy statue? Or
well, we don't all get Grammy statues,
okay,
because
okay,
they have very tight rules. So the producers get Grammy statues, but the band who played on 12 of the 14 tracks, they don't get them. Everybody else gets certificates. So that's really nice. We'll frame them. But you know, it's may it be my first opportunity, but not my last.
Indeed. Well,
because I got a couple other projects down the road, and well, I can come back later and talk to you about those.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to have you promise to us you'll come back on the show when that time comes. For now, though, we'll say goodbye. That's been John Leopold, former Santa Cruz County supervisor and first-time Grammy winner. Who knows? Maybe there'll be more in the future. John and his team won the Grammy for a tribute album to the King of Zydeco, which honored Louisiana musician Clifton Chenier. John, just want to thank you again for coming on the show. I'm sure this is the first of many more appearances, and thanks for filling us in on this really important history. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to community supported radio like KSQD. We love listening to it.
All right, that's been KSQD's and KSQT's Talk of the Bay. I'm your host, PK Hattis, signing off for the day. We'll see you next time.